Questions to the Prime Minister, Mr. Chris Mullen.
Madam.
This morning I presided at a meeting of the Cabinet and had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. In addition to my duties in this House, I shall be having further meetings later today.
Mr. Mullen.
Will the Prime Minister confirm that he could, if he wished, without any impact on the date of the general election, extend the life of this Parliament by the few days necessary to allow Sir Gordon Downie to publish his report? And if so, may I suggest that as soon as he leaves here, he nips down to the palace, has a quiet word with Her Majesty, and puts an end to this distasteful business once and for all?
Well, there's already been a Privy Council determining prorogation. I've no intention of changing that. The prorogation always follows within days of an election announcement. When I announced the date of the election and the prorogation, the House had no surprise about the date of the election. We'll see, there was no surprise about prorogation, and when I announced it, there was no representation then or at any time in the past, publicly or privately, from the Labour Party about changing the date of prorogation. Not once. Not until the unemployment figures were leaked did this become an issue.
Sir James Spicer.
During the course of the campaign, I've no doubt that my right honourable friend will be coming to the south of England and, in particular, we all hope, to Dorset. When he comes to Dorset, will he pass on to the people of Dorset and all the people in the area served by Southern Electricity the good news that as from Tuesday they've had an 11% cut in the course of the last 9 months in their electricity bills, which amounts to £40 to £50 off their electricity bills? Isn't this proof that privatisation works? And would that have happened if we'd had a windfall tax?
Well, don't travel by train, says the honourable member for Bolsover. The honourable gentleman, of course, I understand, has indicated to his constituents he may be retiring from this House now he's 65. We shall all miss him. And he'll have plenty of time to travel by train, and the fares will be less expensive following privatisation than they were before. Just like water. Just like water. Deputy Leader says no train. Since he's sponsored by RNT, he knows a great deal about strikes. I didn't notice much condemnation of strikes by him when they were threatened last summer. He stands for strikes. That's his whole history. The reality is that customers are benefiting from falling prices and improved levels of service from privatisation across the board. And I think, from memory, it was the right honourable gentleman who once said of electricity privatisation, "There is no doubt," said the leader of the Labour Party, "that after it prices will rise." Since then, they have fallen.
Tony Blair.
Madam Speaker, can I remind the Prime Minister of his firm and unequivocal promise last October to do all that he could to have the Committee on Privileges report published? Can I now put to him two ways in which this could be done? The first is to seek a postponement of the prorogation. The second is to agree with us and the other opposition parties a one-paragraph bill that would allow the committee to sit from now until dissolution on the 8th of April. Can I ask him whether he will now cooperate to allow us to do that in order to fulfil the clear, unequivocal promise he made to the people of this country?
As ever, he quotes partially, but I will deal with the substance of what the right honourable gentleman had to say. Of course I would have preferred this matter finished. I said that months ago. Of course. I would have liked all the inquiries done. I would have liked the inquiries finished into the funding of the Leader's office. And the inquiry finished. finished into the Deputy Leader's office. But the fact is that Sir Gordon Downey's report is not finished. It has not yet gone to the committee. And when it gets to the committee, as the right honourable gentleman knows, that is the start and not the conclusion of the process. It is obviously a complex report. It's been made clear there are thousands of pages of evidence. It's obviously complex. It will obviously take time to consider. And those members that may be criticised will obviously wish to make representations and give evidence. The thought that that could be done fairly and properly in a few days is improbable in the extreme. The right honourable gentleman knows that. What he also knows is that, based on what has happened on earlier occasions, before that matter is fairly concluded, parts of the substance of it might leak in a prejudicial way. That would not be in the interests of this House or natural justice, and I have no intention of changing the prorogation date of this House.
Speaker, the Prime Minister says that I quoted him last October partially. Let me say what he said last October in the Frost programme. I'll tell you now, he said. I will tell that committee I believe they should publish the report. I want it settled. I want it settled, David, he said. And when Frost puts to him, do you hope it's reported and published before the next election? The answer, absolutely, he says. Madam Speaker, if the objection is time, then can I put this to the Prime Minister? Let the committee sit. If indeed it cannot finish its report for genuine reasons of time, so be it. But what is surely outrageous is when the committee...
Order! Mr. Shaw. Order.
Madam Speaker, can I put to the Prime Minister that what is absolutely outrageous is where the Commission is able to sit. The Commissioner's report will be ready on Monday. The Members of Parliament concerned want the report to be published. What is absolutely outrageous is not to let them have the time even to try. And if he continues to stonewall, people will believe that the reason is not technicalities or can't, it is won't.
The right honourable gentleman is still quoting selectively from what I said. I made it clear that although I wished to see the report published speedily, and I did, that this was a matter for Gordon Downey, and he would have to take the time he needed to deal with the matter properly. Perhaps his task would have been easier if some people hadn't delayed handing over important evidence, but that was not the government's fact. The fact of the matter is that this needs to be dealt with impartially, not in an atmosphere where it could be selectively leaked to damage people who may have nothing whatsoever to hide. The right honourable gentleman had no interest in this on Monday. He had no interest in this on Tuesday. He only had an interest when he had the unemployment figures leaked to him to try and hide what is actually happening. This is a matter that needs dealing with fairly in the interests of the members concerned, not in the way the right honourable gentleman wishes to deal with it. What he wishes is to let a smear stand, not let justice be done in its own time.
Mr. Speaker, justice demands this report be published. That is what justice demands. And I simply say to him, any members of the public watching that interchange will conclude he simply does not want it published because he fears its publication. Madam Speaker, has this Parliament not ended as it began by a government? Yes. It has ended as it began by a government breaking its word. Yeah. And can I say to the Prime Minister, if he fails to have this report published when everyone knows that he could, It will leave a stain on the character of his government that will only be erased by a new government with a fresh mandate that will restore confidence in our public life for good.
The stain, the stain, if stain there will be, is upon a Labour front bench that has smeared and smeared and smeared again. The Labour leader has traded in double standards from the moment he took up office. This is the Labour leader who sells policy to the trade unions for cash, who refuses to comply with the code of practice on party funding, who calls for party openness but won't publish the secret funds of his own office, who attacks share options but takes money from millionaires for his own party, who attacks businessmen and asks them to fund things for him, who flew Concorde and failed to declare it, who has a deputy leader who spends a weekend at a five-star hotel and doesn't declare it, and who flies to the other side of the world to do newspaper deals and never admits to them. If there's any double standards, they sit there on the opposition benches.
Next question and the next answer. Mr. Churchill.
Madam Speaker, may I, before taking what I hope is only temporary leave of this House, thank my right honourable friend and his government on behalf of my Manchester constituents for making this country, the UK, the best functioning economy of all of Europe. With half the levels of unemployment of France or Germany. Is it not precisely because those two countries have not had the benefit of a Thatcher major revolution that they are suffering from what in the Labour Party days used to be known as the British disease?
Madam Speaker, before I respond to my honourable friend, may I say that I noticed when I last sat down that my right honourable friend, the member for Westmoreland, is back in the House following this dreadful accident. May I say, Madam Speaker, that my right honourable friend will be retiring at the end of this Parliament, but he will leave behind him reforms to our procedures in this place that have greatly improved the workings of our House. I'm delighted to see my right honourable friend here, and I wish him a speedy and a full return to complete health. To my honourable friend, let me say I agree with him about the economic condition. We now have more jobs, better education, improving health, falling crime. That is our achievement. While the Labour Party spends their time trying to disown their past, I spend my time improving our country's future.
Mr. Paddy Ashdown.
Madam Speaker.
Order! This House must come to order. All sides.
Madam Speaker, we did raise this matter on Tuesday and I'm raising it again now. Can I bring the Prime Minister back to the central question, which is this, that there is now clearly both provision and precedent to give this House the opportunity to clear up the Cash for Questions scandal once and for all next week if the Prime Minister wishes it, but he doesn't. Now, Sir Gordon Downey regrets that. The Committee on Standards and Privileges regrets that. His own honourable members, who still are under a suspicion of sleaze, regrets that. And the nation as a whole, no doubt, deeply resents that. Is the Prime Minister now to be the only person who will use a technicality to stand in the way of truth? And if he does, then he should not be surprised that those in the country will conclude that he enters the election as he conducted his administration, on a broken promise, on a slippery evasion, and with his party mired in accusations of sleaze.
Well, the right honourable gentleman ends as pious and pompous as he's been throughout this Parliament. If what he said were correct, why did not his member on the committee actually ask for what the right honourable gentleman asked for he did not? Why did not the Labour members of the committee ask for what the right honourable gentleman asked for they did not. This has been a political stunt by the right honourable gentleman and the leader of the Liberal Party, and they both know it has been a political stunt from the moment they learned what the unemployment figures were.
Mr. Harry Barnes.